Welcome, all you free range junkers. It's Carrie Christensen, your host, your pick and pal, and junkyard Jezebel. We're here to talk about long, delightful walks through the flea market, our best tips for repurposing or growing your vintage collection or business, and how we all respect the rust. All right, so let's talk about how we kind of got started doing cleanouts and estate sales because there was so much you and I talk about on a regular basis that if we had that to do over again, we would do it differently than we did. So one of the first side hustle jobs we did when we were starting our estate sale business and adding that to the various antique businesses that we had was about an hour away from us in a town called Rochester, Minnesota. You might recognize the name Rochester, Minnesota, because that's where the Mayo Clinic is located. It's about an hour west of Unalaska, where we live. And we actually got hired to do that cleanup by a friend of mine who had a mother-in-law that was going into an assisted living situation and needed to move out of her house. And it was a house full of stuff that she didn't really know what to do with or how to deal with it. And Rick and I had a conversation and we just said, we can help with that. There might be a lot of really great stuff there and we love a good treasure hunt. So we decided to take that on, and we really had no idea what we were doing back then. That was what, 5-6 years ago, probably.
Probably at least that long, I think. And I think we only even had one employee at the shop at that time, maybe two. And so we were,
Yeah.
I was shopping for mostly eBay stuff and really wasn't doing anything but eBay. We hadn't started the estate sale business even yet. So for us to take on an entire household like that, it was really new to us and different. And there was more volume there than what we ever realized. And uh, when you're doing some of that business as like just the eBay hustle or whatever, you're looking for specific things, not an entire household. So we learned really fast about how much volume a house can hold.
Yeah, no kidding. And, at that time we had our small shop on 3rd Street. We weren't in the new shop. So we really had no storage at all except our own personal household garage here at home. And we have a 3-car garage, thankfully, but at that time we had 3 cars in it because we had teenage drivers. So your car, my car, and their car. So we kicked one of the kids out, if I remember right, and the 3rd stall became storage for some stuff because the shop on 3rd couldn't handle any additional volume other than what you were doing for eBay and store.
Yeah, well, that was, if I remember it, because it was the second shop, not the first shop on Main Street, the even
Right.
tiny one. But we were using the garage because I had probably had a couple classic cars sitting there, and the third stall of that garage was our eBay room or whatever, merchandise room. So yeah, we had, even though we had a 3-car garage at the shop too, that was full. So nowhere to go with anything.
Yeah. So my friend had asked us for help, and we said, well, we'll go take a look. So we were coming back from the Twin Cities at that time, driving through Rochester, and said we would stop and take a look and just try to get a sense of how much work it would be. And we really underestimated how much work it would be. And so, when you talk about lessons learned in the antiquing and picking business, you can almost always plan on something taking more time than what you think it's going to. Anything that looks simple to fish out, get down, pack up, whatever the case may be, pretty much plan on an extra hour or hours because it will never go according to plan 100%. And so we've just learned that over time. Like, we just got to budget a little more time, a little more materials, a little more trailers, a little more storage, a little more, boxes, whatever the case may be, because it's never exactly what we think it's going to be. But that house was a 2-story house in a nicer neighborhood in Rochester. And the family actually had a very good job situation, which also is kind of another picker secret. If you're going to pick somewhere, you don't typically do it in a trailer house. Typically, anyway, sometimes you find treasures in a trailer house situation, but typically you look for the more affluent or larger farms, or something where there's going to be either high volume of things to pick through, so you're going to find some good gems, or it's going to be higher quality of items, just simply due to the socioeconomic situation of the family or the people you're picking. So in this instance, they had a nice house in a nice neighborhood. We knew that the husband in the family that had passed away had had a really good job, and so we knew that there wasn't going to be a lot of pressed sawdust furniture and paper to throw away. There was going to be some good gems in there. So we went in and started looking around, and like I was looking on the top floor is my recollection going, yep, okay, there's some furniture here, there's some paper to go through. And you went down to the basement.
Yeah, and it was unbelievable volume of stuff. There was, the first thing that jumped out at me was, a model railroad, uh, train set, and I'm not a big model railroad guy. I mean, I've done toys for the entire 25, 30 years that I've been in the business, but never was really big into trains, but I knew they were good trains. It was actually a German brand, high-end, German brand train with a layout, um, and those are really good pieces. Found some other stuff, some of the toys that like I said, I've been doing toys forever. Some of the kids' toys that were, adults at this point now, that were stashed in the house from back in the day, and just tons of volume. And you look at stuff and you can see dollar signs there in pretty much anything. And we went into this job basically, getting paid to just do a clean out, but we were, going to try to save whatever we could to try to sell them, because that's all the more money you can, put in your pockets at the end of the day, then on top of just cleaning it out. So we were looking for better stuff to just see what we could pull out, and um, yeah, there was plenty.
There was plenty, but there also was plenty that mice had gotten into and water had gotten into, which you find in a lot of older homes or with a lot of older folks, because they either can't get down into their basement anymore to see if there's water, mice damage, that type of thing, or the home is older and maintenance hasn't been kept up, or they can't see things as well as they used to. So we do find that in a lot of cleanouts that we end up doing, or a lot of homes that we pick. We hear that story from kids or grandkids or whoever's responsible for the home that they just don't think dad could get down there anymore, or whatever the case may be. So a lot of volume, but a lot of it had water damage. A lot of it had been chewed on by critters and needed to get thrown away. So we quickly realized we were going to need a dumpster. So we ordered one of the biggest dumpsters that we could get there, and started to pitch. And at that time, we really didn't have a great grasp on what things would sell, because, like as Rick mentioned, he'd been selling toys, starting to get into beer signs and advertising just a little bit, but really, really nichey business with toys. And so we hadn't done a whole lot of household stuff to date at that point, hadn't sold furniture, we hadn't sold a ton of old ephemera or advertising types of things. We really weren't into the retro stuff at all. And there was great retro furniture in this house, like a really cool tulip table from like the 60s era, and chairs, really cool fireplace, just some neat things because they'd lived there so long. But we didn't really know the value of that kind of stuff. And we had a very tight window, if I remember it. Was it like 2 weeks
Yeah,
or?
we had a really tight window. I think it was less than 2 weeks, if I remember right. And you were still working a full time job at that point.
Yeah.
I was still doing this full time, but it was really busy time of the year for me with a couple other shows and flea markets that I was tied up on. In fact, I had gone over the one day on the way home from a flea market. I had been picking the flea market all day,
Yeah, because it was
and
Gold
didn't
Rush
even
weekend,
yeah, it was
right?
Gold
Yeah.
Rush weekend, and I didn't even get to by you guys till like 3, and I think I stayed until 10 o'clock that night just because we were so limited on time
Yeah.
to try to get everything done.
Yeah. Most of those nights we were there really
Yeah.
late, had to drive the hour back, and you
Yeah.
had to keep going back and forth because we still had kids at home, so it wasn't really an option to get a hotel. Not to mention we had to haul things back. So we would, leave there 9, 10 o'clock at night, come home with a full trailer, empty the trailer, go back the next day, keep at it. I think, did we have the dumpster emptied once or
I think we had the
twice?
dumpster emptied once. We did have the van at that time, so we were doing the pickup truck and trailer and the van, trying to make trips with it.
Your dad
Um,
came over to
yeah,
help.
I think
My
Dad
friend Wendy
came.
came over to help.
Yeah.
We were kind of recruiting whoever we could to help us because it was just a massive volume of stuff. And then while we were there too, we realized that there was good usable furniture. I mean, there was a really nice leather sectional, but we really weren't using Facebook Marketplace much at that time. Because now that I think about it, this had to have been probably like 8, 9 years ago already. I would be willing to bet. And so Facebook Marketplace wasn't really as prevalent as it is now
Yeah.
for selling things. So we were just kind of starting to use that in our area anyway. So we would put a couple pieces of furniture up and say, hey, come pick it up at this house, trying to get the bigger pieces out of the way so that we could keep going through the boxes and the corners and cupboards and trying to find the small things. And we had people fishing stuff out of the dumpster, mattresses and stuff that we didn't think were fit to really sell, but people were fishing that stuff out. And so that was kind of one of our big lessons is, wait a minute, people will buy or, you can give away free a lot of stuff, and you don't need to fill a dumpster with it and have it go to a landfill to take up space if somebody can use it. Even if it's not up to the standards that you and I personally would want, somebody else may need that. So I think that was a big lesson for us to try and
Yeah.
utilize like the free marketplace boards and stuff like that as much as we could to get rid of big things.
Yeah. The free pile became a pretty constant thing while we were there. Every day we were there, we kind of started in the morning and post and just add to it as we went. We did haul stuff out to Goodwill.
To
They
the
were
point that they told us not to come
Yeah,
back.
we actually got asked not to come back to Goodwill because after the third van load, they had nowhere to go with some of the stuff.
After the third van load of books, the guy said to me, "Please don't come back to this location." And I said, "Well, what do you mean you're Goodwill? Like you have to take this stuff. It's donation. That's how your business survives." And he goes, "And we don't have the space, so don't come back here." And he was quite
Yeah,
grouchy about it.
pretty short. And and unfortunately, the van that we had at that time had the graphics for my business on it, so they kind of knew it wasn't just a personal. I mean, after three van loads, you'd obviously realize it's not probably just a personal thing anyway.
Yeah.
It was a business moving it, but it was still good usable stuff. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
just it was
For
stuff
sure.
that we just didn't have an outlet for, being an hour from home, or couldn't haul three van loads
Mhm.
home in a day as easy as we could just haul it over to the Goodwill, which is about 2 miles away from the
If
house we were
even.
working in.
It's
Yeah,
like
it
a
was pretty
mile down the
close.
hill.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a store that had enough space to even try and sell that stuff. So if I remember right, we ended up getting a storage unit
I
and
think that
having to
was
rent a
yeah.
storage unit. And we really learned a big lesson from that too, that we tell everybody that we come in contact with that's renting storage units. So, one of our biggest business lessons that we can share is renting storage units is just pouring your money down the drain. We recognize not everybody has a place to store things. And sometimes that's your only option, and sometimes it's short term, like it was for us. But those suckers aren't cheap. And we realized quickly that everything we were storing in there, any profit we would make by selling it, was getting eaten up by the storage unit fees. So we realized right away that if we were going to keep doing this and trying to make a go of cleanouts or estate sale business, we were probably going to need a different storage solution. So shortly thereafter, I think we
You were doing estate sales
Mhm.
by then though, because at one point, what the final straw was, I think one of the other cleanouts or whatever that you had done with a ton of furniture, you were up to like three storage units that you were renting it before we
Yeah, you're
bought our
probably right.
warehouse.
Mhm,
Because then when we closed on the warehouse, we had to empty those like within a day,
mhm.
because we closed on a day and then we had a day before your lease, you had to renew them for another month. So we emptied three storage units into the warehouse like in a day.
Yeah.
Um,
So we'd bought a warehouse and a storage unit complex that we use for our business. And, that's another thing that it's like you buy a bigger house, you buy a bigger storage unit, whatever the case may be. And you look at it and you're like, holy smokes, we'll never fill this up. Yeah, lies. You will fill it up. Pretty much whether it's a house, a storage unit, a garage, or whatever, we're humans and we really like material things, or we really have a lot of material things. And we found that there was such a um, drastic amount of work once we kind of got the word out that we were doing cleanouts and estate sale businesses. It was kind of like boom, 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 estate after estate after estate. And we were doing the cleanouts or the estate sales almost faster than we could sell the items that were coming in from them. So we filled that warehouse up pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it's hard to turn down work, but one of the things that you really have to try to limit yourself on is try to move the stuff as fast as you get it. I mean, there's one thing to have inventory, and it's good to have inventory because that's future sales if something would be slow. But You don't need 2 or 3 years worth of inventory sitting there with your money tied up. You got to turn and burn, and not a lot of people are doing that sometimes.
Yeah. They're paying to store it.
Yeah, and then storage. So by the time you end up moving some of the stuff out of that storage unit, what you've paid on the years of storage, you haven't even broke even, unfortunately. So, turn and burn is the is the
Yeah.
word.
And pay attention to what you're storing. I mean, that's something else we've learned over time too. And I mean, don't get me wrong, we still do that. When we go to clean our warehouse, when the temperature warms up after a long Wisconsin winter, we'll be cleaning. Rick will be at the back and I'll be at the front. And I'm looking at some of the stuff and I'm like, why have we been storing this? This is just like metal recycling. It needed to go, to the recycling center a long time ago. Or this is garbage. Why wasn't it even taken to the dumpster? So, you really have to be thoughtful about what you're storing. And that clean out we did in Rochester was another great example of that because when we walked into that house, we saw massive volumes of stuff, but we also saw some really good stuff. Like Rick was talking about, there was, a really good quality train set. There were fur coats and fur hats. There was really unique pieces of furniture. There were Department 56 houses in the boxes. There were, things that they'd collected over the years or that had cost them a fair amount of money that we should have been able to really turn and burn, like Rick is saying, and make some good money on. But because we stored those items along with a whole lot of other junk until we could kind of go through it because we were on such a compressed timeline, um, any profit was quickly eroded by storage unit fees. So I think that was something that we've tried to be better about moving forward is not to just get junk drunk and look at, oh my God, there's so much stuff. There's going to be great stuff in there because a lot of times it's a lot of cardboard and a lot of styrofoam and packing materials or things that are damaged. And so you really have to weigh the cost of disposal and the time for disposing of things that are not fit to be sold with the high dollar or high ticket items or good items you can find.
And then this one just, the situation being an hour from home just made it that much worse too, because you can only take
Sure.
so much in a load, 1 hour one way. And so we had to make multiple trips all the time. And looking back, there's a lot of stuff we drug home that never should have got in the van. And a lot of stuff that went in the dumpster or went to Goodwill that looking back should have gone home. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes, I think, in that one. It is what it is. That's how you learn.
Yeah.
But
I
the
mean,
but the distant thing is always something you have to consider too when you're doing
for sure.
anything. I mean, whether it's a clean out, whether it's a buyout, whether you're going to a flea market, whether you're going on a picking a collection of something, you got to take into consideration that the distance you have to go, your time is worth something. Your return on investment, I always call it, and time is a finite thing. You have to do what's going to make you the most amount of money in that same amount of time that everybody has. And that was and that job itself was a like Carrie said, a job that we kind of did for a friend. um it was more or less a thing that, you know it was our first one. We were new, and we didn't really have a lot of the knowledge that we have now, but it was still, we probably would have done it anyway, even
Yeah,
had we known more, just because it was a friend
for sure.
had needed some assistance and had nowhere else to turn, or didn't know anywhere to go. So
But we learned really quickly that we couldn't make any money if we were driving back and forth an hour each way. So we shrunk our radius and said, okay, if it's not within 30 minutes of our shop, we can't get to it easily enough back and forth for it to be a viable option for us to do either an estate sale or a clean out. So that radius really kind of helped us tighten that up to the point that we could make better money on a job and make better decisions because it wasn't going to just be us moving forward. It was also going to be staff that would be having to drive back and forth as we grew our business and more staff time you have in a car, just getting to a job site, the more profit you have to make. And it's not always there if you're hauling out garbage. So,
and nobody's getting any younger, and nobody can move an entire household full of
no,
furniture without
God,
help.
no.
So it requires staff.
Yeah, and we didn't unfortunately have it wasn't during the summer when we had kids out of school and their friends that could really come and help or
Yeah.
anything like that. Football teams can be a good godsend when they're available to come and help lift stuff. But it was during a time when the kids were I
Yeah,
think
that's
just
for
started
another
school.
story, but I can remember the college football guys that showed up at an
Yeah.
estate sale that, ended up making more money than what they spent there because all the people at the sale paid them to move it all their
Yeah.
stuff out of the house for them. But
Yeah.
we can get down on that path rabbit hole another
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
But
So there you go. There's another story to look forward
yeah,
to another time. We hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode and hope you learned something, or if nothing else, we're just mildly entertained by our antics of the mistakes we've made along the way. There'll be more of those in future episodes as well. Until then, happy picking. And remember, if a friend tells you you pick up too many things on the side of the road, you don't need that kind of negativity in your life. Find better friends.